We'll conclude proponent testimony, move on to opponent testimony for House Bill 1073. Any opponent testimony? Good morning, Mr. Chief Justice.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Steve Jensen. I'm the Chief Justice of the South Dakota Supreme Court, and I'm here on behalf of the Supreme Court to express the court's opposition to HB 1073. I have some prepared comments, but I appreciate that there are some time constraints as well. So let me start by talking about the primary concern of the court, and that is that this is fundamentally an issue that the Supreme Court should take up and not the legislature. Constitutionally, the Constitution specifically states that the court has the authority and the obligation to regulate the practice of law as well as the admission of attorneys to practice. You know, as I sat and listened to proponents' testimony here today, there's a lot of nuances about this bar examination, and I could talk for hours, and I saw, I think, some eyes glaze when we started talking about the details of the bar exam that I took about 30 years ago, and that every member of the court has taken and passed. And it's a test that is hard, but it's a test that tests the rules of law and the principles of law and requires study to pass. And I think that those responsibilities as an attorney are important. And so constitutionally and practically speaking as well, this is a debate, and this is an issue that should be taken up by the Supreme Court, not by the legislature. I think it's important to note we have had two rules hearings on the bar exam in the last 4 years relating to test scores and passage. The court has addressed some of the issues that have been raised and has been responsive to those concerns. What I would tell you, however, is that there has never been a request brought before the court to say, let's get rid of the bar exam. Let's go back to a diploma privilege. There's been no discussion about how that's going to be implemented at the law school, and I think that that's where that discussion needs to be taken place. And to have that discussion in front of the legislature and spend a few minutes to talk about it, I don't think is an appropriate forum to do so. And so I would respectfully request, constitutionally and practically speaking, that the legislature would properly reject this bill and allow the court to take up these issues, which it should do. On the merits, let me just talk about the merits of 1073 briefly. There's been a lot of discussion about the inability of applicants to pass the bar examination in South Dakota. And I think Dean Fulton and Jack Heeb, who are here from the Board of Bar Examiners, will talk a little bit about that. But one of the things that I want to point out that I think is important is that there are 17 individuals, 17 that have not been able to pass the bar exam since 2013. There are about 3,000 licensed attorneys in South Dakota. So over 9 years, that's about two applicants a year that have been unable to pass the bar exam. Now, have there been individuals that have had to retake it? Absolutely. There have been individuals that have taken it several times. After the third attempt, an applicant has to come before the court and request permission to take the bar exam. And we've been very liberal allowing individuals to attempt to continue to study and to prepare for the bar exam and pass the bar exam. And so we're not talking about a large number of individuals that have been impacted by the bar exam. We're talking about a very few. And I think that that's an important issue to understand. This is not an issue that's impacting the practice of law in South Dakota. Has it impacted a few individuals? Yes. And I'm sympathetic to those individuals that have not been able to pass the bar exam and have attended law school. But before we have a wholesale change in our standards for admission, our standards for competency in this state, there needs to be some consideration of how are we going to implement, whether it's at the law school or another basis to address competency. We have an obligation as a court to protect the public. Every time we sign a diploma or a certificate to practice law, we're stating this person is competent to practice law. If the bar exam's taken away, we're then dependent upon the law school to do that. I think the law school does a good job of educating students, but the process of educating a professional is different than the process of determining professional competence. Every profession in South Dakota has a competency examination. I can't think of a profession that doesn't. We're not unique. We're not unique amongst the states. There are 48 states that have the same bar exam that South Dakota has. And so this is not a unique situation at all. And so I want to make sure that there's disabuse any notion that we're unique in South Dakota in terms of our situation with competency to practice. With that said, I would simply ask this committee to reject this bill, allow the bar and the court to address the appropriate standards for competence, and not take this up and move into really a new realm that the legislature has not previously addressed for over a century. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll open up to questions of the committee.
Chair.
Representative Goodwin.
This is for Chief Justice, please. Hey, Your Honor, you stated, I think, I wrote it down kind of quickly because I was trying to pay attention, that you thought this was not in our jurisdiction but in yours. And if that's the case, then why haven't you handled it?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
We've been responsive to two different rules hearings requests, and so I'm not sure what you're asking in terms of why we've not been responsive.
Follow up?
Yeah, please. Yes, Your Honor. I'm a layman at this. I mean, I'm not even an attorney. I mean, I don't know. I one time had a bet with John Hanson over here that I could pass the bar exam, but I don't think I want to take that bet. No, it sounds like it's harder than I thought. But so, sir, my question is, would it be possible for you to handle this situation where it doesn't have to come to us to put it in some type of codified law? Is that a fair question?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I guess what I'm saying is this is an area, and we've heard a lot of testimony today about thoughts about whether the bar exam is appropriate to determine competence or whether there's other measures. I'm not going to tell you the bar exam is the only possible method, but we've not been presented a thorough presentation of, here, try this method. Now, Dean Fulton has some thoughts. I'm open to considering other thoughts and suggestions. I'm open to the possibility of putting a group together to study that. But we have not had a comprehensive discussion or request, more importantly, to implement some way to determine competence for individuals other than the current bar exam that we have that's been accepted and is used in 48 states.
Thanks, Your Honor.
Further questions? Representative Gosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, you'd mentioned something about 17 people that have failed the bar exam in the last, I don't remember how many years you said, but are there any currently, right now, that or recently have taken it? I mean, where are we at on today's status?
Mr. Chair, what I would tell you is I asked our Secretary of the Board of Bar Examiners to go back and look since 2013, and the number of individuals who requested, and these are USD graduates, only USD graduates, the number of individuals who have requested to take the bar exam and have not been able to pass, and she counted 17 individuals who have not yet passed. Now, some of those individuals, and I would tell you that we recently had a request for a seventh opportunity to retake the bar exam, and we granted it. And so if someone can explain and provide us with an understanding of what they're going to do to study the rules of law and make sure they're able to pass, we're open to considering retakes. But there are, by the count of the Secretary, and of course they're confidential records, I'd be happy to disclose them to the committee, but I'm going to have to go to 17 people and ask them to release that information. I can't do that. I can just tell you the numbers.
Follow up.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair. So we heard testimony earlier that there was 50 some people, but only 33 passed the bar, and so on and so forth. In your recollection, how many of those individuals that are coming to our law school are not from the state? Or, I would assume that's the reason. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and I might defer to Dean Fulton on this in terms of numbers. I know this year they're at right around 50% non-South Dakota students. I don't know if Mr. Chair, if you're okay with deferring that
Mr.
to
Fulton,
Dean.
would you like to take a stab at that one?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Historically, Mr. Chairman, we have been about 75% South Dakota students and 25% out of state. This year, our entering class was closer to 50-50. That was a result of the Board of Regents letting us give in-state tuition to 150 and above LSCT out-of-state students. So we simply recruited 20 more out-of-state students than we've ever gotten, and our goal is to try and convince some of them to stay in South Dakota. But you're right, Representative, that most of those folks that are coming off the top are taking the exam in another jurisdiction for some reason.
So I'll follow up, Mr. Fulton. That can help explain some of the number discrepancy.
It can, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
It can, Representative. I think one of the things that's difficult when you look at the bar numbers is lots of people collect those. The ABA does not define first-time student in the same way as the South Dakota Board of Bar Examiners. So you just kind of have to get in and look at it. But the biggest reason you're going down from 50 to 33 is folks just not taking the South Dakota exam because they want to be in Nebraska or Minnesota or Colorado or wherever they're going.
Thank you. Further questions of the committee? Representative Gosh, go ahead.
If I may, I'm sorry. He brought that up if they're going to other states. So if we do away with our bar exam, what's that do? We've got to have reciprocity with neighboring states, right? What would that do to that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
It would make it extremely difficult, what they call portability, moving from state to state. It would make it extremely difficult if you haven't taken a bar exam. There are a number of states will accept the multi-state bar scores and say you can be admitted in this state based upon your passing the bar. So it would make it difficult for individuals to either be licensed in multiple states. For instance, where I came from, the southeast part of the state, a lot of individuals are licensed in Iowa and Nebraska and can transfer those scores back and forth, and you wouldn't be able to do that unless you take the bar exam.
Further questions?